of you enjoyed your networking break. Hopefully you made lifelong friends, maybe some happy hour partners. I am honored to be here today and talk with our esteemed guests here. I was asked to be here. The woman before me canceled because of a bad hair day. I was the gal all along. But I am from Integral Ad Science. If you're not familiar with our company, we are the global standard in trust and transparency in digital advertising. So we've been around for many, many years. We work with advertisers directly. Some of these folks, and I think some of you, we work with your agencies as well. Basically to make sure that the money that you spend on your digital advertising are in the right places online, that is safe, that is suitable, and that all of the great work that people do for brand purpose is not distracted by one bad impression, right? Or small impression. I think why we were asked to join this conversation is because we think what we do is to, again, pave the way to make room for this great work. So before we get into brand-specific questions, I know your titles and your faces are up on the screen here, but I'd love to hear from each of you, like, what is the work behind the title, right? Like, everybody has a title here, but what does it actually mean? What do you do on a day-to-day basis that brings you here to this brand purpose conversation?
Yes, nice to meet you everyone. My name is Fernando. I'm the Director of Marketing at Ferrero. I'm currently managing the Fannie business. I've been with the company for over almost 4 years now. Was in the cookies business before, and now in the premium chocolate segment. I was a consultant early in my career, moved to the United States. You can notice my broken accent. I'm originally from Brazil. Moved here for business school, and then I developed my career in CPG, worked at General Mills. Then I was at 3M, managing the Scotch Brite business, and then came to Ferrero when we made the acquisitions here in Chicago, cookies business from Kellogg and the Fannie Mae business. So as a director of marketing at Fannie Mae, let's go through all the facets of marketing, from like product innovation, managing P&L, managing our pricing strategy, how we're going to go to market. And I think the most fun part of all is understanding our consumers and developing, creating the products that will entertain them. So it's everything marketing related.
Awesome, thank you.
Hi everyone, Jason Piroc, Head of Marketing and Brand for Springboard Hospitality. We are an owner, operator, and developer of boutique independent hotels, predominantly in destination markets around the country, a lot in Hawaii, a lot in California. We have great rates, so if you want to check it out, come and see us, especially Hawaii. Would love to get some business over there. Anyway, so as head of brand and marketing, I really oversee everything under the sun for Springboard as a brand, as a B2B brand. We're not a consumer brand. And then our investment advisor side of the business, which is more of our conceptual development, fundraising, investing side, and then all of our properties as well. So it's everything from digital, traditional, PR, social, literally everything that you all know as marketing is under my realm.
Thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. Derek Russell. I am the manager of global sponsorships at United. And generally, what I tell people when they ask about what I do is that I bring strategic partnerships and sponsorships to life. Obviously, sponsorships and strategic partnerships are basically another medium to potentially bring your brand message through. And my goal is to find those sponsorships and partnerships that make a lot of sense for us, negotiate those contracts, and bring those to life. And that brings us everywhere from, if you live in Chicago, United Center is the most obvious example, but we sponsor over 20 some odd stick and ball sports around the United States and the world, along with several concert series, events, lifestyle properties, those sorts of things. So it's interesting. You've probably heard of United Airlines, like in general, right? So I don't need to go over that. But yeah, it's a fun career. I've been at this for a little over 11 years. Was previously on the agency side in a consultancy role, and yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Thanks, Derek. You guys know me. I was up here before. You know what? I wore a sport coat this morning. I actually did, and then one of my planners said, "It's not you. I don't like it. Take it off." What it's worth. This is Polo. This is Ralph Lauren for anyone.
You're saying
Fernando's got a T-shirt, so Anyway, I work in Alien, and I direct the brand building there. That's what you heard before. So that's very much like a planner, just on the client side. Agency planner.
Thank you. So it sounds like you guys all have the extreme privilege of doing exactly what the title of our session is there, is bringing your brand purpose into action. So, the next question is, what does brand purpose mean to you, and why is it important for companies to think about it today? I think we all go to work every day trying to make a net positive influence on the world around us, and you guys are positioned to be closer to that end consumer relationship. So what does brand purpose mean to you as an individual?
I think it's really bring a lot of self-knowledge, understanding where your brand comes from, what are your values, what you want to stand for, and bringing this to life through how you communicate with your customers, with the consumers, with your suppliers, and bringing those values and actions in everything you do. I think that sometimes it's just way more than just selling a product, but it's bringing actions like, I could give some examples of what we do at Ferrero today. We have a beautiful partnership with the St. Jude Children's Hospital in Tennessee. So we invite all the Fannie Mae customers when they come to our stores to make a donation to the hospital. The cookies business, we brought to life a program with Famous Amos Entrepreneurship Initiative, where in order to honor the memory of the founder of Famous Amos, we created a program to help foment entrepreneurship among Black business owners. So I think it's just really thinking about what your brand stands for and how can it actually transpire through actions, your values, and that's really the brand purpose.
I think for me, in my industry in hospitality, it's really about connection, experience, and creating lasting memories, right? I'm in the travel business, which I know many of you probably love to travel, and for us, it's our lifeblood, right? It's not a choice. Like we have to act on those things every day, because without it, that means our reputation. That means there's no retention. There's not loyalty there. There aren't those referrals for the B2B side of the business, and so that's extremely important that we're constantly interacting and making those experiences and kind of taking it to the next level. And so much of it is public, right? I mean, many of you deal with this too. Social media, for us, review sites, listings, etc. It's all there and it's all right out in everyone's face. So it's important to be paying attention to it.
Yeah, there are probably some similar themes here, right? But for me, brand purpose is the living, breathing embodiment of your brand, right? And you can campaign, you can talk about what your brand purpose is. You can make it up, you can throw it against the walls, see what sticks, and say that, okay, this is what we want to be. But is it really you, right? And that's where that actions, and that's where the embodiment comes in. And Jason, you alluded to, it's all out there, right? And we at United Airlines, it's no different for us. I'm sure many of you have seen so far mentioned in social media. But the big thing for me is that it is that embodiment. It's what you actually commit yourself to doing. And you really have to ask yourself, when you're undergoing, a brand campaign. Good Day's the way, we'll talk about that later. Good Day's always our brand campaign we launched like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now. Are you willing to live up to those ideals and what you set forth? And I think I can honestly say, us at United Airlines and 80,000 employees that we have, we're all behind it. We all buy into it, and that's really the question that you have to ask yourself from a brand purpose perspective. Is this something we're willing to do and actually get behind and commit to?
Thanks, Jared. For us, it's a slightly different question. We at Alien, because all of our brands operate in the health space, we have this unique advantage of sort of being born with purpose. I mean, there's nothing wrong with helping people who have coughs or diminishing the effect of allergies or helping people with osteoarthritis. So our brands, just by virtue of being, are pretty benevolent. But we understand that, in the game of building meaning and distinction to competitive, that purpose is clearly a very powerful lever. We haven't always gotten it right. We we've stepped in a lot of bear traps, but one of the things that we consistently do that I think is really awesome is we begin, here's a tongue twister for you, we begin to look at the systems around the symptoms. So if somebody does have systemic allergic rhinitis or really bad gastroesophagus GERD, okay, maybe they're in a food swamp, maybe the food ecosystem has affected the gastro, maybe they're not moving correctly, maybe not warming up before they do their sport. Maybe the air isn't clean enough and that's why they have to use like a nasal cleansing. And when we do that, what you watch is your marketers, they start becoming their purpose, and they're waking up Saturday morning and Sunday morning and they're reading about air quality in India, or they're reading about the benefits of movement to move pain through the body, and then the fire has already begun. It's over at that point. They're waking up and doing it anyway. And they're understanding the underlying causes of it. And that to me is better than inking like a brand purpose on a page, because now it's in the person. And they're alive, and they're breathing it, and they can't wait to bring it to bear. I have witnessed more success in that when I see a person catch on fire and just fall in love with the area than I have with the frameworks and the process and the protocol and the models. So that's where we're seeing the heat.
Awesome, thank you. Let's stay with you, Zach, since you're on a roll here. You alluded to this, and Derek, you mentioned it before about you can make something up and you can see if it sticks against the wall, but that's not the intention. And Zach, you had an interesting answer when we talked about this yesterday. How can having a well-defined brand purpose change the game or help you be differentiated from your competitors?
Yeah, well, maybe this is my contrary nature. I don't know. Even just if you pick apart the question, well-defined, there's an assumption. You immediately you would nod your head and go, well, definitely, it's got to be really well-defined. Does it? I mean, I don't know. You have to ask yourself. The more you, because I have spent 2 years buying decks from purpose consultancies, and I said when we hired them, sorry procurement, I said we're going to end up in 1 year with decks, and they go, no, it's a large monolithic organization. We need to be able. I said, here we are 2 years later, we have decks. So we have really well-defined purposes, and nobody knows about them, and they're not doing anything. And in the meantime, while we're making decks for 2 years, I've watched those other marketers that I just referenced catch fire and just go and do. So I'm sympathetic to look, I'm a strategist. Of course, we need to sit in the room with Post-it notes and all that. But it's, what you say is what you want to be, and what you do is who you are. And so it's in the doing, and it's in the action, and in the prototyping, and in the trying. And that's where I think we get stuck. We seem scared to try. And that's where I'd like to see us be a little more playful, I think.
Great. Derek, do you have a comment on that? It's hard to follow.
Right, yeah. It's so I'll use good leads the way as an example. United, good leads the way. It's our brand ethos, and to me it really boils down to doing right by our employees, our customers, and the communities that we serve day in and day out. And that's a pretty significant commitment, and it's not easy to do. But the nice part about where we are with Good Leads the Way is that, and I mentioned this in my earlier answer, that we are really bought into that. And we are really committed to living up to those ideals, and that commitment, that you need that up and down the organization, not just with leadership, but people who are, everybody doing the work and bringing that to life. And it's not easy, but I gotta tell you, I'm loving the momentum that we have going in that direction, and just some of the investments that we've made, not just in our product, but in our people. That's critical to living up to some of those ideals, and I'm really looking forward to us keeping that momentum, as we move forward.
I would say on this topic, so being in an industry where there's a lot of dense competition everywhere we are, right? It's important for us to know exactly who we are and how we stand out, and and there's power in that, right? But where we found success in that realm, and more specifically in a lot of our lifestyle hotels that are more experiential, that are maybe more connected to the community, is really leaning on our associates to be those brand ambassadors and making sure that they've experienced everything that, you know, that's going on in that community or that the hotel has to offer, whatever it may be, so that we can then translate that over to the guests of our hotels, right? For example, we've got a smaller collection within the larger portfolio that is really doing this well, and their whole perspective is around they want you to feel like you are part of this network when you stay at these hotels, right? You're part of like the in crowd in a sense, and you get access to experiences that most people don't know about, and those were built on relationships. They're not something that you can just like go out and find online or, you know, whatever it may be when you're doing your research and traveling. It's because we have curated those relationships, and our associates at the hotels are very familiar with those experiences, so that when someone comes to stay and asks, like, what are the must-dos while I'm here for 24 hours, we can say, you know what, you've got to go down to the oyster and produce farm down the street. You're going to get a tour, and then after you tour and John, the farmer, whoever it may be, talks to you all about what's going on there, then you're going to eat those oysters and that, you know, those vegetables while you're at dinner tonight at the restaurant. So it's kind of taking it to the next level, but it's really using, you know, the power of the people within the brand and within the hotels to help us do that.
Share seats.
Yes.
One more.
Yes, one more. I think when it comes to food, at Ferrero, we're extremely diligent, disciplined with the ingredients we put in our products, how we make our recipes. And we don't game, we don't play with switching ingredient for something that's going to be cheaper to achieve a certain profit. We really stick to what is the best recipe and ingredients, and make extremely transparent on where the food comes from, what the ingredients come from, and our sustainability, you know, with the farmers, like the cocoa, the hazelnut, everything where it comes from, we're extremely transparent, because it is so difficult to acquire new customers. It's so difficult. I mean, in CPG, we talk about this every day. Like, you're acquiring new customers, they're looking to have household penetration, repeat rates. You don't want to put at jeopardy your brand reputation in order to just achieve a short-term goal. So we take this extremely seriously too.
Let's stay with you. I want to dig into something we talked about yesterday. Ferrero's purpose is care for the better. And you have some campaigns that you guys have launched that really brings that to life. Can you tell us about that?
Of course. When it comes to care for better, again, alluding to the ingredients and quality of food, ingredient and people are the center of all Ferrero's piece of advertising you'll see. It's really showcase the deliciousness, the high quality of the ingredients that we use. You see this in every advertising on Nutella, Ferrero, Share, Kinder Joy, Kinder Bueno. So we put really at the center to really represent the high quality of the ingredients and the occasions and the consumers, and how much fun that being at breakfast with your family, having Nutella, or being gifting your loved ones with a box of chocolate. So that's really transpires in everything we do when it comes to advertising and bringing our values to life. And then there's also the brand purposes, which each individual brand at Ferrero has its purpose. And I think, again, the famous Edelman cookies, we created the Black Entrepreneurs Initiative. That is also part of how we communicate and bring the brand to life, because the brand is meant to honor the memory of a Black entrepreneur. He created this brand a long time ago. He's not involved with the brand anymore, but we want to, and entrepreneurship was a big cause of him. So we wanted to create a program that fomented Black entrepreneurship. So that's from our advertising, being on TV or being on PR, things that sometimes don't even put much focus on, much spotlight on, make sure that we do everything right all the time.
Jason, we'll give you a break for a second. We'll go back to Derek. Derek, you mentioned before Good Leads the Way is the new brand ethos for United, and you touched a little bit on that campaign. Can you tell us about how you and the brand are navigating the always changing ecosystem, the digital, right? There's CTV, there's digital out of home, there's new social channels. Like, how are you guys taking advantage of those, or even pacing yourself and what to get involved in and when?
Yeah, sure. I'll kind of answer that a little more generally, kind of working my way into it. So, a good way to bring your brand ethos to life, right, is aligning with partners, strategic partners that frankly believe in very similar values to yourself. A really good example for that with us is we have aligned with the official airline for the Golden State Warriors. And I mentioned earlier that Good Leads Away, it's about doing right by our customers, by the people we serve, our communities, every day. And frankly, Warriors very similar commitment with that as well. And we actually partnered with them and another local organization to put together a program called the Franchise Fund, which basically benefits 25 minority-owned businesses in the Bay Area. And you mentioned channel communication. There's a lot of great content that we produce that comes out of that campaign, and we specifically target to San Francisco and the Warriors fans. And I can tell you up and down how that alignment with the Warriors is really valuable to us, and all the research that we've done indicates that anybody's a Warriors fan and knows that United is the sponsor, they think more highly of us, which is good for us, frankly. But really, probably one of the most beneficial things about a program like that is the value that not just those businesses are getting from the program, but we're supporting the community that we live in, right? That our employees live in. We employ over 10,000 people in San Francisco. We're supporting the local economy in the area, in a way that we can affect it, right? And that's really, it's kind of a difficult thing to do. And I'm not going to sit here and pat myself on the back and say, oh yeah, we're really affecting strong things here. But we're making a difference in a community that is really critical to us as an airline. And to me, that's the most important part of why Franchise Fund makes sense and why we're taking that sort of program and moving it to a few of our other strategic partnerships in and around the world.
Awesome, thanks. So Zach, you spend a lot of time working on brand purpose. You work in the Center of Excellence, right? You said Halion has a number of brands that do really interesting campaigns, and I know you guys did some work for Theraflu with our gracious hosts here at Edelman. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. We're really proud of the work, and thank you, Edelman, for bringing the ideas to us and nurturing it. The key, we've learned a lot of lessons. Like I said, we've stepped in a lot of bear traps, but we're learning our way forward. The key that I think we've discovered is that when the proximity between the purpose activation and the product is closer, that's when it makes so much more sense. When you have it's very simple, when you have a right to play. And so in other words, you're always, the game is threading together your business problem and your growth opportunity, which is really made up of business factors and your brand growth plan and all that stuff that you would do anyway as a marketer. And now sort of having double vision and holding the brand growth plan where you need to go, what puddle you need to swim in to go make revenue, and then holding that in your left hand and in your right hand, holding what you want to go do in terms of social change. And so with Theraflu, it worked brilliantly. I think we're in our third year on this program, and it grows every year. And the predicament was that Theraflu, for those that don't use it, it's amazing, it's great when you get sick. I can't tell you enough about it, it's incredible. I actually didn't use it for the first couple of years that I worked there, and then I got COVID and I used it, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I waited so long. It's a hot liquid, you kind of mix it. If you have a hot water dispenser in your house, you're lucky because you can kind of just mix it in the cup and go. Otherwise, you boil some water, microwave, or whatever, and mix it together. But it's a very different ritual than popping pills. And it's coming out of a very different narrative from culture where you pop pills and power through. Everyone's familiar with that, oh my God, I'm sick, but just keep going, that whole thing. Well, after the pandemic, pop pills and power through is really, I'm not sure it was ever a good idea. We're kind of violating, what our body is telling us. Our body is saying rest and recover. So we already had this business opportunity to reframe healing from the perspective of the sensorial. And we have some not our purpose work, but sort of our mainstream marketing that shows the cup and it's shot in thermo color, and you can see it's very sensorial and it goes down your throat and the whole thing. It's very sensory oriented, as opposed to like NyQuil, where you like pop the pills and you just go to bed or whatever. So that was already what we were trying to do from a brand perspective. Then all of a sudden, the person leading the brand at the time fell in love with this problem, this social problem. Not everyone has the ability to stay home and right to rest and recover. So Edelman came to us with the idea that, oh my gosh, it's like when Dove surfaced the idea that like 8 out of 10 women are uncomfortable with the phrase, I am beautiful. You see statistics like that, we call them audacious statistics. You're just kind of like, that's a book waiting to be written. That's a story waiting to be told. So the fact, I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but the number of people who can't take sick days, who literally are and they're marginal. It's mostly African American women and Latino women who don't have jobs where they can take sick days, and they're worried if they do take a sick day, or if their kid is sick, if they stay home, they'll lose their job. So now you're fighting for the right to rest and recover, and you're going and you're doing policy change, you're doing awareness building, you're doing all kinds of, we had anything from poetry all the way to working with organizations to change their policy. We had to clean up our own internal policy and make sure that we were giving people the right to rest and recover. Now you've got a story, and the story is directly linked to the product and what we were going to be doing anyway. So now it's marketing bliss. It's meaningful, it's distinctive, it drives choice and preference at shelf. And when you walk down the aisle anymore, you don't just see Theraflu, you see the one that's fighting for you, sitting next to a wall of NyQuil. So that was the trick, is dovetailing the two together, the commercial need and the social need.
Love that. Also love Theraflu.
Yeah,
Easier barrier entry
It works.
than the Flonase that you talked about before. That's a little more intrusive than hot liquid. So Jason, let's bring this home with you and talk about, I'm going to share the mic back, thank you. Springboard Hospitality, you talked a lot about, it's a lifestyle brand, right? It's an ecosystem of luxury and having these unique experiences, but you also mentioned a little bit about how you touch on sustainable farming in communities. So it's not just about the guest having this luxurious great time, but it actually impacts the people that live in the community where your hotels are. So can you tell us a little bit about that work and how that ties to your brand?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned before, we've got a few of our lifestyle hotels that really lean into this experiential piece, and a lot of it is about being in the community. It's not just about being there and trying to grab business from the local economy or those, visiting. It's about being more ingrained in the community. It's, collaborations with, makers. It's collaborations with artists. It's, working with local farmers. It might be working with local, partners around activities. So it's not like we're, coming in and just like bulldozing your town. We're really coming in and ingraining ourselves in the community and making sure that we're building those partnerships, those relationships, and that we're here, and we're here to support you, the locals, but also to, support the economy. And I think in that regard, not only does it give the guests a good experience, but it ends up creating, much better relationships to move forward with other initiatives in the community. So,
Awesome. Thank you. I think we have time for one more question down the line. I think so.
You've got 10 more minutes.
Okay, great. We'll just do one more quick rapid fire. We'll start with you, Fernando. Everyone here is obviously very grateful to be learning from you guys. You're experts. You do this every day. What are some tactical steps that other brand marketers can take to identify what their brand purpose is?
I think, like I said in the beginning, know your story. Know the story of your brand. Know where your brand came from. I think authenticity is what's going to help you have a meaningful brand purpose. The example I gave of the famous Animals Black Entrepreneurs Initiative, it wasn't easy. And it seems like nowadays everyone should support Black businesses. Why not? We spend a long time and it's smiling at the back because we work together on this. But it's really interesting what's the roots of a brand, what it came from, and what's the meaningful purpose. And so when you transpire your brand, being on packaging, being on your social media, being on TV, whatever channel you're using, you be coherent with the strategy from beginning to end. In that specific case, it was difficult for us because the owner of the brand, the previous owner of the brand, I should say the founder, he sold the business a long time ago, and then the business was sold and resold with multiple companies many times. And he had good and bad relationships with the companies that owned the famous Amos Cookie brand. And when Ferrero made the acquisition from Keebler, we acquired the business, and he was already 85 years old, living in Hawaii, not very distant from the brand, but we went back to him, we interviewed him, we interviewed his family, we understood all consumers, what people understand from the brand, to really build the foundations to build a purpose for that specific brand. And that took us time, took us resources, but it was that work that led us to make this one of the many successful brands we have at Ferrero today. So take the time, be authentic. I think that's more than anything else. Don't try to fake or come up with a story, because that won't stick in the long term.
I would say whether you're new or established, never waver. What I've found in a lot of the brands that I've worked for over the years is that I find like a brand filter is probably, it might sound like kind of novice or whatever, but I feel like that is something that can really help you. Like identify those questions that stand out for you as a brand, and anything that comes by our way, whether it's a partnership, an activation, a social media influencer, if you will, that you're putting it through that filter. Do they really align with who you are, what you do, what you're about, and what you stand for? And if you can't say yes to one of those questions, then filter them out, right? I think that to me is just don't waver.
So yeah, Fernando, you mentioned starting with authenticity, and I 100% agree. I'm actually surprised I haven't said authenticity yet, so that's twice. So it starts with authenticity, 3. But you also have to, you really have to look at your brand and what that brand's capable of. That sounds really aspirational, but you really have to ask yourself and be 100% honest, no BS. Are we capable of making X change to be more sustainable, or give back to the community? Or you define that yourself. And it's really easy to say yes, and ABC will make these changes. But it might require a change management project in order to actually commit to that. And that all kind of ladders up to authenticity, right? If you say you're going to do something and you just kind of have that and you don't really do it, but you kind of say that you do it, everybody sees through that. And it's just, at the end of the day, you're just kind of pouring money down the drain. If at the end of the day you're not being authentic, you're not being authentic to your brand or what your brand stands for, you can change that, but you just have to commit to it.
Yeah, that's you guys got it, Derek, Fernando. I think that's it. I worked at Mondelez for a while, and there's some incredible legacy brands like Cadbury they were scared when Kraft, the big bad Kraft, bought them. That they would lose all of their essential. So you got Cadbury, and there was Oscar Mayer, and like was said, they get handed down from MBA to MBA, and they're devoid then of of the founder mojo. And you'd be surprised how incredibly useful it is to go poke around in the history of where the brands came from and find out where they're special. It's almost like life coaching, where they say where were the best moments in your life? What was the anatomy of why those were the best moments, and then can you recreate it? It's incredibly useful. So I echo that sentiment. It does become authentic. But the only but I would say is the risk of repeating myself, make it personal. It has to be personal. If you don't fall in love with the territory, then keep looking. Because again, if you're not waking up at Saturday and Sunday morning kind of reading about the topic, then it's probably a day job, and it probably won't feel authentic, even if it is true to the brand, because it's really not true to you. And if you're at the helm of a brand, you kind of are that brand. So finding something that you fall in love with and that you're really excited about, I think that's another great first step to it. When you feel it, everyone else will feel it. It's contagious, I think.
Amazing. Okay, so to summarize, be real, don't waver, no BS, be authentic, and make sure you know the history and make it personal. So, any questions?
I have a question. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. how do you measure ROI so you can get more funding to continue to do the great work that you're doing? Because when it comes to sponsorships, I mean, that's something that I really struggle with, right? Because there's so much to it that is intangible, it's hard measuring the tangible.
Yes. I will respond with a better answer.
Just repeat the question.
Sure. I'll repeat the question. How do you measure ROI? In particular with sponsorships. And there's a few different ways you can do that. What I feel most confident in is similar to how we measure our own Net Promoter Scores at United, our NPS, is actual surveying within we'll call it a market that X sponsorship resides in, and measuring, controlling against folks who are not aware of your sponsorship versus folks who are aware of your sponsorship, and asking very specific questions related to not just your brand, but also we'll call it funnel metrics. Whether they actually purchased a ticket on United in the last 12 months, whether they've considered purchasing a ticket on United in the last 12 months, stuff that you can point to and say, okay, yes, because we are aligned with the Golden State Warriors, people who are aware of our aligned with the Golden State Warriors, our NPS is like plus 14 or 15, I don't remember exactly what it was on it. But if they're not aware, it drops like 10 or 11 points. And those are numbers that we can point to, especially for us as an airline. It's kind of hard for us to directly tie a link between that person bought an airline ticket because we, fly to Chicago. But what we can do is ask those questions that specifically address, purchase funnel metrics, and that gives us some legs to stand on as far as, okay, yes, this is contributing, this much. And none of that really surprises me, frankly, because sponsorships exist for a reason. And when you align with like-minded organizations, good things can happen. And that's how I tell that story.
Any other questions? One more?
I have another one. Does somebody else have one?
I don't think so.
How do you, so this is maybe a question for Jason, how do you activate locally at scale? So you talked about doing things really local and curating stuff, and how do you do that at scale? Because if you want to cover the whole organization, but you want it to be hyper-local, how do you do that virtually?
Yeah, so the question was, how do you activate locally at scale? Is that fair? It's interesting because at my role currently, along with my role previously, lifestyle and activations and programming were a very big part of the DNA. I would say more in my prior role, but there's definitely some specific hotels and collections within Springboard that it is more apparent. But I think part of it is, number one, we do have a role that is director of experience, or in some cases director of lifestyle. So that is their main focus, is their meeting with people locally, they're building those relationships, so they've got collaborations, they're meeting with people to create partnerships, and these could be anything from like an artist in residency, it could be a skate around the lobby, I've seen that happen, it could be a DJ series up on the rooftop, whatever, it could be a number of things, night markets, all of this kind of thing. But I think the first thing that you've got to do is create the DNA, right? What does experience or lifestyle mean? And then start to train that out to the folks that are actually doing it on the ground. And then from there, ultimately, they're responsible for curating those experiences. So really, we've created this as this is the broader direction and strategy of the company. Here's what the role looks like, here's what good looks like, or here's what maybe not so good looks like, and then take that and interpret it at the local level and make it truly custom to that region or that market.
Thank you. That's it?
As marketers, right, and as communicators here, there's a talk about the brand say and the brand do. In your experience, which comes first? Or how do you balance wanting to do something ambitious like a brand purpose, doing something, and yet the desire to market that, to get consumers to understand that brand purpose? How do you balance that? Which comes first?
I'll say it, I'll chime in and just say, I don't think it works unless it's one story.
Exactly. I was going to say the
It's
same
gotta be
thing.
one story, so everything you're saying, you're doing it better, right? It's gotta be.
So they gotta go together.
Yeah, and so I don't actually think one comes first. I think that they're both birthed out of understanding the narrative, understanding the story that you're telling.
And I think they're evolving too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're evolving with time, right? And as people we're evolving, right? Companies evolve, brands evolve, and so I do think that it's just this constant evolution, this constant cycle that's always happening.
I love your question because I think that's how brands used to think in the past. Put the brand purpose later. Like, what should it? Okay, now I'm a brand. What should I do now to look good? And I think that's we evolved a lot, much more than what brands used to be managed in the past. And it's now its whole process. So who am I as a brand? What do I stand for? And that needs to transpire again from product, through your actions, through everything, how your relationships with your stakeholders.
If you don't mind, Jason. Final thought on that whole well-defined narrative. Clearly, we need a well-defined purpose. I mean, I agree with that. But well-defined, but par-baked, which is exactly, I think, what Jason is saying. Well-defined, but capable of moving and being, if it's rigid, then you're not reacting to the marketplace. You're not really having a relationship with the issue or with culture or with your consumer, and you've just got this rigidity around. Right? So well-defined, but half-baked, so that you can continue to work with it.
Is there, sorry, I'm going to jump in. Is there such thing as too much reaction? Right? There's every day the consumers are asking for something different, wanting something different. So where do you draw the line between reacting to the public and staying closer to your brand purpose?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pass it. I'll just say I don't think you ever want to be in a position where you're looking your people please. That's people please.
Right.
Right. You're just in this reactivity mode. Did that work? No, that didn't work. Let's try this. Does this work? That's not. That doesn't. There's no heart there. There's no key.
Right.
I'll just mention your brand purpose is a guiding light for you, right? It's a guiding light for your organizational strategy and how do you go to market. And it's the reactive thinking. Part of it's a judgment call, right? But at the end of the day, when you're letting your brand purpose be your guiding light, and I like the half-baked example. That's perfect. And part of that can be, I don't want to say up to interpretation, but we'll say everybody. You've asked 80,000 different people, they probably have 80,000 different definitions of what good leads the way means. But when you hear good leads the way, you get a pretty good idea of what we're talking about when we mean good leads the way. And so you'll get 80,000 maybe different definitions, but everybody's pretty close to each other. You kind of get what we're getting at. And the whole reaction thing that helps kind of guide how you respond to those types of situations. And we've definitely evolved as a company in taking those reactive questions forward.
Thanks for answering. Any other questions from the audience? No. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time, everyone.